Listen.
Jagex have just given us teasers for the League's 4 combat relics, and now we know what they are, we can finally start to answer the big question. What is the best combat style? I say start to answer this question because the League is still about a week away and Jagex are leaving the rest of the information for us to kind of unravel ourselves. I'm going to start by going through each of the combat relics and their applications in game before finally answering the question, which one is the best? First up, we have Brawler's Resolve. This is the melee relic, and here's what it does. Melee weapons with an attack speed of 4 or above are halved and rounded down. Melee weapons with an attack speed of 3 are halved, rounded up. You become immune to all status effects, including poison, venom, and fire breath. Stuns and roots still apply. You gain a 10% chance to critical strike, dealing double damage. Your melee accuracy is increased by 50%, and you also gain a 50% defense buff against all styles. While it's not noted in this original teaser, we do have the heads up that this relic will also have a 90% charge reduction for weapons like the Blade of Seldor and the Scythe of Vita. Brawler's Resolve is an incredibly strong relic, and on the face of it, looks to be an obvious choice for overall DPS. The halving of attack speed has some really exciting applications. For the first attack speed reduction, the biggest benefactors are going to be weapons on odd tick cycles, and particularly within the 5 tick category, as they'll come down to become a 2 tick weapon. Most notably the Osmundan's Fang, Scythe of Vita, and Soul Reaper's Axe. These weapons are already head and shoulders above pretty much everything else on the melee tier list. Of course, these are locked behind raids and are pretty big ticket items to obtain, but there are some other odd tick weapons that can really benefit from this. Take the Darok's Great Axe for example. It comes down from being able to attack once every 4.2 seconds to every 1.8 seconds. And with the latest teaser hinting at a retribution and revive style relic, you might just see some reward to the risk that comes with staying low HP for the Darok set effect. The second part of this attack speed element is there to keep the 3 tick weapons or the faster weapons in check. And I know what you're thinking. That ham joint is going to do jack shit, but with enough strength bonus, you can hit a 26 with this thing.
Are you serious?
And if it wasn't for the rounding up element of this relic, that would happen every 0.6 seconds. And that's not including the potential critical hits. So yeah.
Who wants from him?
While we're on the topic of this relic's DPS, your accuracy is going to get a 50% increase, which is a nice to have, but more notably, the 10% chance to critical strike and deal double damage. This is insane. While you're not going to be proccing this all the time, faster attack speed weapons synergize perfectly with this because you're going to have more chances to roll it. And for all of you theory crafters out there, unfortunately, this doesn't apply to the multi-damaging effect that the Scythe of Vita has or the Crystal Halberd. They only count as one specific attack, and they won't roll the critical strike damage more than once. Understandable though, otherwise this would clearly break the game. More so than intended. Let's talk about the defensive add-ons to this relic, because it's the only combat relic that has this built in. The immunity to status effects is kind of crazy. No worrying about Venom at Zulrah, Volcath, or raids, not to mention all the other effects that probably go unnoticed. Brawler's Resolve also comes with a neat little boost to all defensive styles by 50%. And this is going to put very niche defensive weapons on a bit of a pedestal. Things like the Din's Bulwark and the Justiciar armor set all benefit from your defensive bonuses. And these are going to make you become an absolute unit. Never mind. And now for the magic relic, Superior Sorcerer. There's a bit of a pattern forming here, but it has an identical attack speed reduction passive. You'll also save 90% of your runes when casting spells, including charged weapons like the Trident, Sanguinesti, and Tumakan Shadow. Bind spells will always hit on an unfrozen target. You will also acquire an item called the Arcane Grimoire, which allows unlimited spellbook swapping for spellbooks you have access to. You'll also get a free rune pouch, which will store up to 2 more types of runes. Your magic attacks will deal an additional 25% as splash damage to nearby targets up to 5. And this also comes with a magic accuracy boost of 175% and magic damage boost of 20. Wow. This relic has a lot to unpack, so let's start with the attack speed. Like before, this particularly benefits magic weapons with odd attack speeds, and unsurprisingly puts the shadow at the very top, thanks to its insane magic damage boost in passive. Of course, I'm not discounting other staffs. The Accursed Scepter, Trident, Sanguinesti Staff, Kodai Wand, or even Nightmare Staff are all incredibly strong in their own right here. This also really reduces the pressure to pick Kandarin as a magic region, because Kandarin is a utility region, and it really just gives you some nice skilling methods and really good jewelry with some other Slayer benefits, but that's pretty much all Kandarin offers. So having that 20% magic damage built in there really does take that pressure away. Still, you can start to imagine how ridiculously high your magic damage could be if you do pick Kandarin, stacking this on top with some of the other magic damage boosting regions as well. The 175% magic accuracy is really going to help alleviate some of the issues that magic has against certain bosses. And the splash damage element to this relic is also so much fun. I mean, it's a take on the exploding attacks from the original Trailblazer. It's got some incredible applications in multi-combat zones. The Monkey Madness 2 tunnels, God Wars Dungeon if you can bunch up all of the mobs, and especially that f***ing monkey room in Tombs of Amaska. The utility elements of this relic are also a really neat bonus. I won't go into too much detail because they're self-explanatory. Saving 90% of your runes is really just going to remove that early game hurdle to build up a nice stock of runes.
No way.
The free rune pouch saves a grind for Slayer points, and being able to store 2 more types of runes, really allowing you to turn up to your late game PVM situations without sacrificing supplies. The last point of Superior Sorcerer is the sure hit binding effect. This is going to trivialize a lot of early game PVM and even PvP scenarios, making it an incredibly strong feature of this relic. There's no need to learn 7-0 Bandos if he just can't move. And lastly, the range relic, Archer's Embrace. This has the same attack speed reduction passive as the previous two, also saving 90% of your ammunition. This stacks with the Ava's devices, resulting in a 98% ammo saving bonus. Your enchanted bolts will have a 2 times boosted chance to proc. You also have a 10% chance that your weapon will fire an extra projectile, and your ranged accuracy is increased by 100%. Okay. Wow. While this relic seems to have fewer features than the others, its strength really makes up for it. I've gone over the attack speed buffs a lot already, and you know I'm going to mention the Twisted Bow, Zaurite Crossbow, Bofur, and Toxic Blowpipe here as the staple high-end, high-performing ranged weapons. However, ranged really gets interesting when you look across the other options. Crossbows go from a 5 tick on rapid to 2. And although I haven't got into the bolt proccing effect yet, having an Armadillo, Dragon, or even Rune crossbow with gem-tipped bolts will out DPS all other ranged weapons in certain scenarios. I'm looking at you, Ruby Bolts. Darts and throwing knives go from 2 to 1 tick, meaning that yes, the Toxic Blowpipe also returns to its machine gun form.
You son of a bitch.
But if you're not picking Tyranwin and picking Zaya instead, you might find that you get a healthy stock of dragon throwing knives. Ballista also become a 3-tick weapon, and the Dark Bow becomes a 4. Saving up to 90% of your ammunition is crazy, and it even applies to your charged range weapons and Chinchompas, which, similarly to magic, makes the run up to late game so much easier and so much quicker. Now for the biggest impacts. A 2 times chance to proc enchanted bolts and a 10% chance to fire an additional shot. There's so much to say on this one, but let's just dip our toes into some of the possibilities. The obvious one is crossbows. There's a possibility here for a very, very quick 220 damage if you're using the Zaurite crossbow with ruby bolts. The dark bow is also confirmed to have a chance to fire 4 arrows. It still doesn't really out DPS the faster contenders, but it's a fun little interaction anyway. The rest is up to your imagination, but I think it goes without saying that the competition between these relics is closer than ever. But come on, we all want the answer. Which one is the best? Let me preface this by saying a couple of things. First up, if you haven't already subscribed, it is the best way to support me, as well as liking the video, and the responses to these so far has been overwhelming, so thank you so much. I'm going to be doing very regular uploads during the league, so make sure to hit that notification bell as well. And the second thing before we get into the meat of this is that you should always go for the style that you think is most fun. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to compare a couple of metrics. First up, DPS. Now, this is ultimately subjective, based on the regions and gear you end up using. For the purposes of this DPS calculator, let's look at this range setup with regions Desert, Asgarnia, Zeya, this Mage setup using regions Desert, Kandarin, and Zeya, and these two melee setups using regions Mauritania, Asgarnia, Kandarin, and Desert, Asgarnia, Kandarin, respectively. Now, I've tested these loadouts across a number of different NPCs, and the pattern that quickly formed was that Mage and Ranged outperformed melee in most instances. Taking this one step further, the winner was quite clearly the Mage setup. Now, granted, you're going to need to be incredibly lucky to get any of these setups, so we won't get too hung up on the DPS. The second consideration besides DPS is how beginner friendly these relics are. And what I really mean by this is, where do they rank in usefulness from the second you spawn in Lumbridge right through to the moment that you're going to end up slapping Zuck around? There's an argument that all are useful, and I'm sure we can all generally agree that melee can get off the ground straight away without needing any ammunition or resources to get going. Its defensive capabilities will put you in a really strong position to push harder content sooner whilst being punished less for any mistakes you make. On the other hand, the magic relic does have some unique functionality. Being able to just freeze most targets leading up to the real PVM challenges will kind of trivialize your playthrough. But of course, the first hurdle is going to be getting a hold of some of those runes. The range relic is going to do an absurd amount of damage, even from the get-go with the likes of a short bow with bronze arrows or throwing knives. It's generally harder though on an Iron Man game mode to get the supplies and associated skilling levels to keep high-end ammunition going. So I'm gonna say that, in my opinion anyway, this one takes the longest to really kick in, but definitely has some crazy potential. If you manage to go the whole of the league without a disgusting dry streak, then magic takes the #1 spot. Of course, this is my opinion, and we all know that until Wook says something's fact, it's pure fiction. I'm interested to hear your takes though. What do you think is the best style? And what relic are you leaning towards taking? Some super exciting teasers so far, and more to come between now and the league's release. So until the next one, I'll see you guys soon.
Broadcasting live right now from your mom's house.